problem. It's not your supervisor problem, but actually this is your problem. So you at the end, you need to solve your problem. So where do you write your problem?
To make it clear.
To make clear, where do you write it?
Problem statement.
In a problem statement. But majority of students, they have problem to make the statement.
Right.
Yeah. So to clarify with this, so now we will discuss about how do we discuss in a qualitative perspective. All right. So because you can see qualitative and quantitative is two different research. Of course, this is a research, but they have a two different approach, which is quantitative research is more deductive. So what's a deductive? So meaning that you're going to test it, you want to see the frequency, rather than compared to qualitative research, is more on inductive research. So when talking about inductive research, so it's more on the exploration, it's more on the understanding, and then you start from the bottom to the top. Compared to the quantitative research, it's more deductive, you start from the top to the bottom. So in a different way, all right? So the qualitative research is more meaningful, and if you want to see the phenomenon, if you want to understand, you know, the phenomenon itself, then qualitative will work well. Okay? So are you ready?
Yes, inshallah.
Yes.
All right. So let's discuss. So my name is Mursyid Arshad. I'm a senior lecturer from Faculty of Educational Studies. All right. I'm working in UPM since 2009. All right. Then I pursue my master's degree and PhD in extension education, focusing on youth development. I was in private before I joined university. All right, I was in Honda Malaysia as a HR practitioner, as a human resource executive. So my last position was a head section for the training and development. All right. So this is my detail, my email, my phone number. I shared to you my personal phone number. If you have any inquiries, you can text me, no problem. And then this is my Facebook, Muhammad Mursyid Arshad. All right. And I hope the number of friends will increase today. And I don't have WeChat account. Please don't ask me about WeChat account. If not, people will call me Budak WeChat. All right, this is about myself. All right, so I'm teaching qualitative research in UPM. So this semester I have two classes, which is Introduction to Qualitative Research and the Qualitative Research in Educational Methods. All right, this is about myself. Anyone want to ask me about myself? Please don't ask me that I'm going back to balik kampung or not this year. I'm from Kedah. So I hope that maybe the situation getting better. We don't know. Maybe they will have the last minute announcement, so everyone can go back to the hometown. I'm not sure. Okay. All right. So this is something picture that you need to ponder. What is this?
Durian.
It's a durian, right? So do you really like the durian?
Love the durian.
Love the durian. You can describe the taste of durian actually. Is it possible you can describe the taste of durian? You know the taste of durian, right?
Yes.
Is it easy for you to share to others about the taste of durian? Can you explain and can you describe the taste of durian?
No.
It will be difficult, right?
Quite difficult.
It will be difficult, right? So meaning that it's something like this is a qualitative research, all right? Because this something that phenomenon happen, you know about the phenomenon, you feel that, however, a bit difficult for you to share it, to transfer it, to let them others know about what is really happen in the phenomenon, all right? So it seems like you need some descriptions, you need a lot of explanation, all right, to share to everyone, to talk about what actually is a taste of durian. So this part, it will be considered as a tested experience or the tested knowledge, all right? So you may not hide the two main things in your life, the two knowledge in your life, which is explicit knowledge and the tacit knowledge. So for the explicit knowledge, the first one, you can see on the top of the pyramid, right, diagram. Explicit knowledge, it seems like something that really easy for you to communicate. It's easy for you to transfer. It's easy for you to share to everyone. For example, I give you a book. I need you to read at the page 86. I give you half an hour to read it. All right. And after half an hour, I want you to explain what actually you from your understanding from your reading. Then you can explain it well. So this is called explicit knowledge. easy for you to transfer. 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. All right. However, when talking about the tacit experience or tacit knowledge, a bit difficult. You know that, you really know, and you really understand that. Let's say, for example, your position as a researcher, you can assume that your informant, of course, your informant meet the criteria. Your informant really know about the phenomenon. They feel it. But to what extent that you want to get their perspective, from informant perspective, to explain about the phenomenon, it's a called tacit. It's a hard to communicate. All right. So sometimes you need to practicing it. However, looking on this part, qualitative research is really suitable for you to understanding the tacit experience. That's why it relates to your research. All right. So it backs to your purpose of your study. It backs to your objective. It backs to your purpose of your study. And of course, you derive it, you show it, you express your purpose of study in your problem statement. That's why I asking you about who are creating the problem. Actually, the problem itself, you create that and then you write down nice properly in your problem statement. From the problem statement, it will help you to strengthen up what actually your purpose of your study. All right. So from your purpose of study, you know that whether your research is suitable for the quantitative research, for qualitative research, or mixed method. So it must be back to your purpose of your study. But majority of students, when I ask why you choose qualitative research, or why you choose quantitative research, or why you choose mixed method research, the answer is because my supervisor asked me to do that. Is it right? So you need to know actually, right? What is your focus of your research? Because if you focus on the tacit experience, then qualitative comes in. So now, how do we write the qualitative research proposal? As you know, qualitative research, we don't have variable like quantitative. We don't have IV, we don't have DV, or we don't have the intervening variable as well. So how do you develop and construct your problem statement? How do you construct your research? You don't have the variable. So how do we write it? Of course, the way of writing in terms of you write quantitative and qualitative research, maybe they have a slightly different, focusing on the niche or focusing on the methodology that you use. All right. So when talking about this, all right, I want to introduce you the first part. All right, the first chapter. So basically, in qualitative research, it's almost similar with quantitative research because the chapter 1 is more like introduction. All right, this is the introduction chapter. Majority of students, they feel that chapter 1 is not important. For them, the important is chapter 4 and 5 because you are presenting the data and then you discuss it and then you show actually what is your finding from your research. However, the chapter 1 actually is very, very important because this is showing that your pathway, where you're going to go. All right. Now you have a car, right? You know about the methods. You have the car, but you didn't know on how do we go. You don't have an highway. So basically, chapter 1 is showing that your highway, where you're going to go. So basically, in chapter 1, you can start with the very light introduction. All right. So maybe you can have the preamble discussion. I think I'm sharing this based on my experience writing qualitative research. All right. So I try to try to dedicate that, and then I come up with this slide so that you can everyone can share it, and then you can see on how do we write the qualitative research proposal. All right. So you can start the chapter 1. So chapter 1 is introduction. What's the chapter 2?
Literature review.
Literature review. Chapter 3?
Methodology.
Methodology. Chapter 4? Findings. And some of universities, chapter 4 is a result and discussion.
Oh, okay.
Right. So in UPM format, chapter 4 is a result and discussion or finding and discussion. And chapter 5?
Conclusion and suggestion.
Yeah, it can be some of university.
Accommodation.
Yeah, exactly. Some university, they put chapter 5 as a discussion part, right? Discussion, conclusion, implication, and recommendation. In UPM, this part, the last part, maybe the chapter 5 is considered as a summary, conclusion, implication, and recommendation. Just a slightly format, right? But doesn't matter. Okay, so now we go back for the first chapter. All right. So basically, chapter 1 is a introduction. So you can start very light introduction. Maybe you can start with the preamble issues, How long you need to write down it? Maybe half pages. Something maybe it can consider as a very light, like a preamble. And then the second part. Now you write down your background of study. All right. So now is your time to write down your background of study. So basically, how do we write the background of study? All right. So in qualitative research, because since we don't have IV, we don't have DV, we don't have the intervening variable, how do we discuss and how do we start the background of study? This is a secret. How do you write down the background of study? All right. So basically, you can see here in my slides. I
Doktor
shared to
tak
you.
nampak slide.
Now you can see the slide.
No, cannot.
You cannot see the slide. Okay, I try do it again. I stop sharing here. Okay, I do it again. Okay, now I'm share it again. All right, never mind. I try to share it again. Okay, now you can see the slide.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so it's much more clear, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a secret recipe on how do you write down the background of study. So the background of study would be actually the main part in the first chapter. You start with the background study. Okay, so what is the background of study? Actually, the background of study is talking about the overview, meaning that the overview of purpose and focus of the study. So meaning that you start very general overview. So actually, what do you want to ensure that reader will make interest to read your background of study? It seems like you buy a book, right? You buy a novel, for example. So how do you attract, how the writers attract the reader to read the novel? So you start very light discussion with talking about the in general information about the scenario, what are you going to study. So basically, you can start this part with your field of studies. So for example, you want to study about turnover intention, okay, in industry. This is I think this is quite common after this. This is maybe, the situation may facing after COVID-19, right? We talk about turnover intention, maybe, okay. So we're talking about turnover intention. In this first part, you can start with the HR. You can start with the human resource perspective. Actually, to talk about the scenario about HR, human resource development, for example. And then, how do you support that? You can support with the literature review from the past research to talk about HR. All right, you can discuss it together. And at the end, please do not forget to discuss what actually the current issue underlying the HR perspective in the world. You can get it from the current research. So what is the current research? Maybe the research maybe less than 5 years. So you can discuss it. You mold it together so that you can have the very purpose overview. You let the reader's interest to read the whole topic. You start with the HR perspective. And then you slowly move into your discussion, which is maybe from the HR perspective is related to the career development. All right. So in talking about turnover intention, it must be based on the career development. You can start with the career development perspective. All right. So you discuss again what actually the past research related to the career development, and also you can discuss what actually the current issues related to the career development from the at least less than 5 years citation. All right. Then you can start. All right. You can start to slowly move to the turnover intention. Okay. In this part, you can see in my third point, you can elaborate why this research is needed. You can provide the statistic report. Maybe you can get it from the statistik perburuhan dan pekerjaan, for example, right? From the labor statistic in the country that you want to study, right? Or maybe you can start with the worldwide statistic and then slowly move to the country that you want to study, right? You can use the statistic report. Or maybe you can use the figures. Or maybe you can use the government policies, for example. Maybe dasar, right? The government policy. So you can write down and then try to mold it together. So in this part, you can use the statistic, the figures, so on and so forth. But please, some of the students, when I read the draft, majority of students, they seems like a reporter. Remember, you are a researcher, you are not reporter. So it seems like you capture all the information. It seems like you are reporting that. But in academic writing, it's not like that. You need to synthesize the information. You need to really synthesize the information and straightforward to talk about the current situation according to the figure. Of course, you will cite the figure. All right. I hope that you understand on how to write this part. All right. It's not similarly you need to screenshot all the table. You put that. Not. Sometimes you need to elaborate. You need to synthesize the information. All right. So that the reader, the examiner will see that, oh, this is important things to study. It makes people interest to read it. All right, and then you can plus with the figures, you can get plus with the policy report, for example, or maybe you can get it from the survey. All right, to support your argument. How about newspaper? Do you think newspaper is a good article for you to rely on the background of study?
Not
What do you
really.
think? Not really, right? But this is a secret. You can use the newspaper, but the newspaper is the last citation in the ranking of the citation. So this is the last one. So maybe you can discuss maybe 1 or 2 citation. That's it. Not all the study beginning from the background study until the end, until page 20, all related with the newspaper. Okay, so maybe you can use 1 or 2. That's it. To show that this is a condition happen in the real workplace or happen in the situation. So maybe you can use maybe 1 or 2. It's up to you. But remember, newspaper is the last worst, meaning that the last ranking in the citation in academic writing. So you can do that to support that. So you can elaborate this, okay, in this part in the background of study, okay? And then you can explain it, how it was conducted, how do you explore it, how do you understand it, and how do you explain it, all right? You can explain it, how do you understand the nature of research. So you can start from in the background of study to show that how you are going to probe it, all right? And then basically, how your research will contribute to the profession knowledge, number 1. And the second one, you need to explain how your research will contribute to the practice. It will be more worthwhile for the academics in terms of for the body of knowledge, because you are contributing to the body of knowledge. And the second one, it will help the practitioner, okay, to use your research, to utilize all the information from your research in their work field, so you can benefit others. All right, and at the end of background study, you need to highlight what is your topic. All right, so you discuss everything. All right, you discuss about the chronology, you discuss about the statistic figure, blah 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 blah, and then slowly move to the topic. And at the end, you need to highlight what is you are going to study. You need to highlight at the last part of the background of study. It seems like you are having a flight. All right, now your flight taken off from the airport, and then now it's currently at the hanging up at the sky 45,000 feet, for example. Majority of students, they have finished their writing in background study, they let that, it seems like the aeroplane is still hanging at the 45,000 feet. You need to show where is the destination. All right, they want to land. So meaning that the aeroplane want to land, all right, want to landing at the airport. So it seems like analogy, you implement it in a background of study. At the end of the part, you need to show, then you need to highlight what is your topic, all right? So this is about background of study. So the major student asked me how long that I need to write down the background of study. And of course, I really sure that the background of study, there will be more pages compared to the problem statement. All right. So how long it works? I think based on my experience, there will be ideally maybe 9 pages for the background study, maybe 10 pages, maybe 11 pages or 12 pages. It's up to you. All right. But believe me, the background of study will be more longer compared to the problem statement. Right. So in this part, you can use the statistic, figures, so on and so forth to support, to show that this is needed for you to study. And remember how this study will contribute to the knowledge and how your study will contribute to the practice. All right. And do not forget at the end of this part, highlighting your topic. All right. So clear for the background study? Any question? Any question for the background of study? Is it clear? Hello?
Yeah,
is it clear?
yeah, Doctor.
All right, good.
Yes,
Yeah.
clear.
Yes, doctor, yes.
Clear.
All right. Okay, if you have any question, no problem. You can ask me. All right. Okay, now you finish your background of study. Now you see at the third one, the problem statement. So how do you move from the background of study to the problem statement? What is the difference between problem statement and the background of study? Majority of students, I'm sorry to say that they are quite confused. What actually supposed to be fit for the problem statement? What make difference with the background of study and the problem statement? Is it right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And then majority of students, they have problem to make the statement. Okay, so now I want to show you what makes difference between background of study and the problem statement. All right. So you can see my slide.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you can see the problem statement here. So in a problem statement, it's more like advanced to the topic. It more be advanced for the general subject matter. Actually, what topic is of interest to you that you could shape into a research study? So meaning that you can bring back the last part of the background of study to be the first part at the problem statement, but more critical argument and critical discussion. I repeat again, you can bring back the last part at the background of study to be the first part in the problem statement with the critical argument, with the critical discussion. All right. So meaning that you start the topic, the very general matter. All right. You bring back that and then show that the topic, what makes more interest for you to shape in your research study. All right. You can bring back the last part and then it's more critical. So how do you make your discussion is more critical? You can have that discussion from the literature review. So the literature review, it can be from the past research and also from the current research, or maybe you can start to discuss about the gist related with the theory or model that would be possible to discuss about the general topic. All right. So it's more critical. It's more critical. And then in the problem statement, you discuss what actually the problem. What actually the problem? The issue is you write down in the background of study. In the background of study, you highlighting the issues. All right, you highlighting the issues. What makes this research possible to study? Remember. And then in the problem statement, it's more like you are not highlighting the issue, but you highlighting the problem. All right. So from the issues you highlight in the background study, so now this is a problem. The problem itself you write down in problem statement. All right. So in this part, you need to discuss the problem that leads to need for the study. You argue the importance of the study. And remember, in this problem statement, you can use and brief, summarize the scholarly literature. It seems like the gist for you to write down this part, it seems like the gist for the chapter 2. Chapter 2 is a detail of the information of the discussion. However, you put the gist here. Let's say, for example, you have the theory A, you have the theory B. So how do you discuss A and B in the research? So you just highlighting the gist. The detail of theory A, the detail of theory B, you can elaborate further in the chapter 2. All right. So it seems like you summarize the scholarly literature, meaning that you use the current literature or maybe the past research, you discuss it, and the detail would be in the chapter 2. But the summarize of the literature, the summarize of current research, you highlight it in problem statement. For further discussion, maybe you can elaborate further in chapter 2. All right. So basically, in problem statement, you can start to highlight why is the gap. Alright, the gap itself. Kalau dalam bahasa Melayu dia panggil jurang. Alright, ada banyak lagu tentang jurang. Okay, jadi gap. Gap, this is talking about how do you share the gap from the knowledge perspective, from the research perspective, and from the theoretical perspective. Alright, and then please at the end of that, actually what is your purpose statement of your research? You will be end your problem statement to highlight the purpose statement. So what you are going to study, you highlight it in the problem statement. All right. Okay, you can see that. You can see from the slide what makes difference between background study and a problem statement. The background study, you can see that is more like you highlighting the issues. All right. When you see the problem statement, it's more like you highlighting the problem. It's more likely summarizing the scholarly literature. Of course, the problem statement is not longer compared with the background study. It's more clearly more critical. It's showing your academic, academic abilities here. So you can see how can see the difference between background study and the problem statement. So this part in the problem statement, this component is supposed to be fit with that. So now the issue is, how do we write that? Right? Are you ready? How do we write that? Okay. So this is a structure, possible structure for you for the problem statement. So remember, in qualitative, we don't have IV, we don't have DV, we don't have intervening variable. But for the quantitative research, you can use your IV, you can use your DV, you can use your intervening variable to discuss in your problem statement, to highlight what is actually the problem. But in qualitative research, we don't have that. So how do we make it? Please, do not panic. Just relax. Tenang is good. All right. Then, first of all, how do we discuss this? Okay, you can see here the problem statement. I highlighting all the points here. How do we make it and structure it into this part? So basically, in a problem statement, it must consist with the four main aspects. You can write down in the four main aspect. First, you write down the context. All right. The second one, after you write down your context, you move to the significant. All right. After you done your significant, you move to the gap. And last but not least, you move to the purpose. I repeat again, context, significant, gap, and purpose. So now we discuss about context first. All right. Are you ready? Okay, the context is talking about the area, the topic that you're interested. So meaning that you bring back the last part, the last issues that you highlight in the background of study to be the first part in the problem statement. But it's more critical. All right, you can fact or you can improve your writing. You can put it the fact and details from the problem from the literature review or from the past research. So meaning that you can highlight. Maybe you can ask yourself, what has already been studied with regard to this topic? You can ask yourself, what are some of the key concepts and how you are defining them? So you can put it in the context, okay? And then this part, actually, you want to help the reader to understand the dimension of the problem, okay? So you highlight in this context. So how long the context? Maybe one paragraph, all right? So one paragraph. Okay, once you done the context, now you slowly move to the significant, all right? So the significant is the second part. What we don't know, what for that your research will address. Why is this a problem? Why should we care about it? Who is affected by it? How does the problem impact on the society? So in this part, the significant is more like you highlighting actually what actually the impact is supposed to be significant in your research. It's not the significant of study. It's talking about the significant of the issues and problem that you highlight. All right. So basically, this example. Okay, for the significant, maybe you highlight the turnover intention happen in the United States is going like this, according to the research. The turnover intention happen in the UK, for example, the rate like this, and then the reason because of this, and then you quote that. And maybe from the Finland perspective, it's talk about turnover intention like this. Now, how about Malaysia? You start to slowly move. How about Malaysia? Then you can start to support the past research or the information that you get from the Malaysian perspective about turnover intention. So you combine it. So you can see how significant your research. All right, then you can put it in the second paragraph. So the second paragraph will be the significant of your research. All right, the significant of your problem actually. Why do we need to study about this? Is it clear? Are you okay with that? Any question? Hello?
No, no.
Is it clear?
Clear, Doctor.
Yes,
All right.
yes. Clear,
All right.
Doctor.
All right. Alhamdulillah. Okay, now.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So meaning that now you have the two paragraphs. You have context paragraph, you have significant paragraph. Okay. All these things is very, very comprehensive and very, very straightforward information from the facts. Okay. It's more critical argument. Now you move to the third paragraph, which is start to discuss about the gap. All right. So what actually is the gap? The gap is known in knowledge between what we know and what we still don't know. What aspect of the topic you are particularly concerned with? Point out the lack of information. There is a gap of knowledge base or research to date, all right, is inadequate. That's actually a problem. So how do we define the problem? How do we actually define the gap? You can differentiate by the three main part in the gap. First is a research gap. All right, sorry, it's a practice gap. The first part is a practice gap. The second one is a research gap. And last but not least is a theoretical gap. I repeat again. So the gap will be consist from the first part, you can discuss from the practice gap. Number two, from the research gap, and some of the scholars saying that it can be also methodological gap because the research related to methodology, it can put under research gap. And then last but not least is a theoretical gap. So what actually the first one, the practice gap. The practice gap, maybe you can highlight actually what happened between the expectation, okay, versus reality. For example, turnover intention is supposed to be like this, and this, and then who said that, and this, who said that, expectation. All right, expectation. And then, however, according to the, let's say, Mr. A, 2019, saying that the turnover intention in Malaysia is happen like this. All right. So you can see the expectation versus reality. For example, young people supposed to be have this asset A, B, C. Who said that? And then this asset. Who said that? You mentioned that. However, based on the current research or based on the research done by blah 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 blah, saying that the level of the use asset is gonna like this. It's not achieving that. So it's showing that your practice gap. You quote that every single part of this. Settle number one. Okay. Expectation versus reality. This is a practice gap. And then the second one is a research gap. What actually the research gap? Research gap, let's say, have you played the jigsaw puzzle before this? All right. For example, I have 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Like this, 4 sections. Okay. It seems like jigsaw puzzle. Maybe this part already touched about turnover intention from the employee perspective, done by Mr. A, 2000, for example, 2017. The second part, maybe they talk about turnover intention, but from the perspective of employer. Before this, talking about employee. Now, talking about employer perspective. Okay, maybe they have another research talk about turnover intention, maybe from the perspective of the equipment, from the facilities. All right, maybe the facility not supporting that to be there. Right, and then actually, what from the perspective from the employee feelings when they go to the workplace, there's still lack of the research. All right, there's still lack of the research. So you can highlight this part. All right, so you can highlight what actually the intention of them, they want to live because of the environment, okay, of the workplace. So the study is there. You plot it, and then you share it, and you cite it. However, this part is still like missing. You want to study. That is called research gap. It's also happen when you write down your this gap. Let's say, for example, they have a turnover intention research before this, but it's more like looking on the quantitative perspective, looking on the frequency that, however, they still like why they want still to live, for example. So you need to go for the qualitative perspective. It can be, all right, it can be. But highlight the first one. The first one you need to highlight actually what happened the past research done, and then what's still missing that you want to study. All right, this is a research gap. And the last but not least is a theoretical gap. So what is a theoretical gap? The theoretical gap, it seems like it's more critical. This showing your scholarly contribution in the body of knowledge. All right, to the body of knowledge. So for those who are doing PhD, it seems like the theoretical framework is compulsory for you. All right. I'm okay with for the master students. They have to come up with the practice gap or the research gap, or sometimes they can provide the theoretical gap, will be better. But for PhD, it's no choice. You need to discuss what actually the theoretical gap. For example, you want to study about the intention to live, mana dia turnover intention based on the workplace environment. You naming as a C. Okay, you naming as a C. When you read about C, all right, during your literature search, you read about C, and then when you read it, you found the theory A. You found the theory A. The theory A just explain a little bit about C, right? The small portion about C. And then you do read it again, you find the theory B, for example. But the theory B just explain a little bit about C. However, theory A and theory B is two different theory. They have no research before this related with these two theories, because these two theories is different. What's the meaning of theory? Theory is an explanation to the phenomenon. All right, I repeat again. Theory is an explanation to the phenomenon. So theory A is explaining phenomena A. Theory B is explaining phenomena B. So how do you relate theory A and theory B to discuss about C? So now, based on your research, you start to contribute to the body of knowledge. From your research, you start to discuss A and B. So you can see the impact of your research. All right? Can you see that? That's on how you write down the gap. So how long you write down the gap?
Okay.
You write down in one paragraph or maybe two paragraphs. It's okay. All right? But the flow is starting from the research gap, from the practice gap, research gap, and theoretical gap. All right? The last part, the last paragraph would be your purpose of your study. In qualitative research, we don't use terminology objective. Objective is a terminology used in quantitative research. All right? Because in quantitative research, at the end of your study, you need to address the objective. All right? You need to address the objective. That's why quantitative research is more like in deductive research. You have hypothesis, all right? Whether you agree or whether you accept the hypothesis or you reject the hypothesis because you are going to test that. However, in qualitative research, we don't have the hypothesis, even though we don't have variable. So you are not addressing the objective, but you addressing the purpose. All right. So you can refer to Bloomberg and Vogue 2016. Why they are discussing qualitative research is more tendency prefer more on purpose rather than objective. You can refer Bloomberg and Vogue 2016. All right. So in the purpose of study, you highlight what actually the major objective. All right. That's why we don't have specific and general and specific objective like quanti, because at the end of quantitative research, you're addressing the objective. But in qualitative research, we don't have general objective, we don't have specific objective like quanti, because at the end of research, we want to address the research questions. So how do you derive the research question? You derive the research question from the purpose of study. How do you get the purpose of study? You get it from the problem statement: context, significant, gap, and purpose. All right. So in this paragraph, you highlight what actually the statement of purpose of your major objective, your intent of study. You want to study about this, all right? So you come up with the statement, all right? This is called purpose statement. From the purpose statement, you derive the research question, all right? Okay, maybe the purpose statement you want to study about actually how do they feel when you go to the workplace, how the environment affect their turnover intention, for example. All right, maybe this is your purpose, okay? Then from your purpose, you derive the research question. From that, maybe the first research question, maybe what do they think about turnover intention? The second research question, what actually happened in the workplace, all right? And then the third one, how do they cope with the workplace environment to lead for the turnover intention, for example. So you have three research. This is simple. So meaning that you construct the research question according to the purpose of the study, all right? This is on how you write down the problem statement. You have the context, one paragraph, significant, second paragraph, gap, the third paragraph, and last but not least, purpose for the fourth paragraph. So you can imagine 4 paragraph or 5 paragraph, for example. How many pages you write down the problem statement? How many pages? What do you think?
One pages plus. 1 pages or 2 pages.
Yeah, exactly. There's around 2 pages or maybe 2.5 pages. That's it. But I still receiving the draft from the students. They write down the problem statement in 9 pages. So it's not the problem statement, but the examiner or the reader, they have problem to find the statement. So please to do that, all right? So it's more precise. It's a very straightforward information, all right? This is talking about the problem statement. So you can see that here, back to the chapter 1. So now you have the research question. So you go to number 5, the significance of study. So in significance of study, it must be consist with 2 main parts, which is the significance to the practice, and the second one, the significance to the theory, right? You have 2 parts. Significant contribution to the practice and significant to the theory, which is the contribution to the body of knowledge. So how do you derive this? you derive from the problem statement. You still remember in the gap, we have the research gap and the theoretical gap, all right? Practice, research, and theoretical. So your writing in the problem statement, they stop until you highlighting the gap. So now in this part, in significance of study part, you extend the writing from the gap from the practice, you extend the writing from the theory. Then you can have these two. Maybe your writing at the problem statement stop until you derive the gap. Then you extend the writing. Then you try to manage your writing. Is work accordingly. Then you can write down why is significant to study. All right. For example, maybe from the theoretical part, you want to study about C. However, you find A and B. And then the significant study, you can write down from this research, you can start to integrate what happened in A and B actually can explain the C. What is the result? Wait for the research. Wait until the end of the study. All right, so you can see that the significance of study. You just extend the writing from the practice gap, and then you start to derive and extend the writing from the theoretical gap. All right, and then number 6 is the scope and limitation of study. Some of the writers want to differentiate the scope of study and limitation of study. It's up to you. All right, this is a way on how you write. If you want to make as a one subtopic, you need to divide by 2 parts. First is the scope, and the second one is limitation of study. Majority of students, they have the confused. How do we write down the scope? How do we write down the limitation? Actually, scope of study and some of book use as a delimitation. Delimitation actually is a scope, all right? So scope of study actually is talk about what you can control, all right? What you can control in your research. So something that you can control, that's a scope. How about limitation? Is out of your control. You may not control that. Maybe they have the challenges, or maybe you are facing something that would be difficulties that you find during your data collection, for example. You may not control it. So remember, scope is under your control. For example, you want to study about the interaction among football players in the field during football games. So what is your scope of study? Is it your scope of study to talk about the football field? Or your scope of study to talk about the stadium? Or maybe you talk about all the compounds in the stadium. Of course, you choose for only the field, because your research is looking on the interaction between football game. All right, football players during the game. Then your scope will be more small. Then you choose it, meaning that it's under your control. However, limitation, maybe you may not expect that when you go to the field, you need to have the polo engagement with them. It's not easy to penetrate them. All right, maybe you need to do something that maybe make them impress, then let them then start to collaborate with them. So maybe this is something that's out of scope. All right, maybe you have need a prolonged engagement with them. So this limitation is something like is not under your control. And last but not least, in chapter 1, you write down your definition of terms. In qualitative research, the suitable words that you can use is a definition of term. It's not the definition of operation, no, because we are not going to test that. So you highlight the terms that you use. Maybe your terms here you use use, for example. So in your research, the use is refer for what? Maybe from the from the policy is between 15 to 30 years old. From the Malaysian use policy, they find that young people is between 15 to 30 years old. However, in your research is looking on the 15 to 18 years old, because you're looking for the use at schools, for example. Then you define it in the system. Then after that, you can use as the term in your writing. All right. So this is called definition of terms. Any question for chapter 1? Any question for chapter 1?
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. You.
Yeah, I'm Awang. So I have some question regarding to the problem statement.
Okay.
For the first question is, how can we make sure and define our question is clear and specific? Because from here, just now, doctor shared about what we do know in the significant study. How can we know that one is haven't been carried out by others researcher as well?
Okay, this is a good question. Okay, Awang, it's not seems like you conduct the research to change the world. You are not going to change the world. Sometimes maybe from the gap, you see that maybe this research has not, they have no past research discussed on this part. It's good for you to ponder it. It's good for you to address it. All right, for example. So meaning that you can construct your research question according to the problem. Majority of students, they have come up with the research question without referring to the problem. When examiner read your research question, then they start to ask, where is your discussion in the problem statement? Where is the problem actually? So what? All right, the question is so what? So meaning that they have not relation between, don't have relation between the research question and also the problem statement. So Awang, if you to address your question, try to define it. Okay, what actually this problem? And then from the problem, you start to come up with a good research question. Okay?
Okay. Thanks, Doctor. I have a question in chapter 1. Here is a problem statement. We have the limitation part. And also in the number 6 also we have scope and limitation. So isn't it repeated?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, what's your name?
My name is Wafa.
All right.
Wafa.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for our presentation. Here is in a problem statement, we have the limitation part based on the limitation. So here in this number 6 in the chapter 1, it is a scope and limitation.
Okay.
So the limitation that we explain or described in the problem statement, isn't it repeated in the scope and limitation part?
All right, this is a good question. So remember, sir, in a problem statement, is focusing on the problem itself. It's not the scope, it's not limitation. All right. Okay. So remember, the problem statement, you highlighting the problem. So you need to differentiate actually the scope of your study, and then you need to separate it from the problem statement, because the scope of study is looking on what actually your scope. Of course, you are going to study in Malaysia. So which part of Malaysia? Maybe you go to the government sector. Which government sector? Maybe for the enforcement agency. Which enforcement agency? Maybe related to the immigration part, for example, because you are going to study from the immigration officer's perspective. That's your scope. Of course, it's totally different compared to the problem statement, because the problem statement, you highlight the problem of research. You're not highlighting the immigration department. Immigration department is the context. However, what actually is your problem related to the turnover intention? So you can see the difference between scope and the problem statement. Okay.
So no need to we repeat the limitation after the scope.
No.
Just we describe about the scope, because the limitation already explained in the problem statement.
Exactly. So you need to have the good problem statement. Try to use this chance as much as good as you can to utilize 2 pages of background of the problem statement with really problem. The rest, the scope, you highlight in the scope, and the limitation itself you highlight in the limitation part. So try to make sure that you know about what's made different between scope of study, limitation of study, and the problem statement.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Okay, so now we go to the second chapter. Okay, all right, this is overview. You can see in my slides here? Can you see that?
No, doctor, I cannot see your slide.
I cannot see your
I
slides.
cannot see. All right, I do it again.
I can see you.
Okay, I do it again, no problem. Okay. So, can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so based on our discussion, all right, for the first part, you can see that from the research problem statement. Do you know where is the research problem statement? Your problem statement itself. All right, you have the context, significant, and get. This is your problem statement. From your research problem statement, you move to the research purpose statement. So what's the research purpose statement? The last part in your problem statement. Some of the writers, they separate between this. You can have the problem statement, and then next you have the new subtopic, purpose statement. It can be. It's up to you. If you ask me, I prefer that purpose statement will be last part in your problem statement. All right? And
Doctor,
then,
sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
But someone just now is pressed. I think they pressed the presenting button, so I lost your slide already.
Oh, all right. Do you want me to share
Sorry,
your...
doctor.
Do
Yeah,
you,
please.
Do you want me to share my slides to everyone?
Yeah, please, doctor, because I think someone pressed the present now button, so I lost your slide.
Okay, no problem. Okay,
Huh.
give me 2 minutes. I want to share my slides to all of you.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
You're most welcome. All right. Okay, for your information, I already uploaded my teaching material in my Padlet. So I share my Padlet now in the chat. So you can see in the chat here. All right, I open the chat for you. Okay. So I paste here. Okay, you can see the link here in the chat. Okay, so you go to the so you go to my Padlet, you just click it. You can see that my topic is how to write qualitative research proposal. You download it, all right? Once you download it, you click you can copy and paste, or you can cut and paste and move to your desktop, for example. And then from that, you can start click it and then just click read only. You can still read and you can print it as usual, all right? No problem. So this is my sadaqah jariyah for you during Ramadan.
Jazakallah khairan.
Okay, you just click read only, all right, and then you can print and you can read as usual.
Jazakallah khair.
Amin, inshallah.
Yeah.
So for your information, inshallah on the 9th of May, Sabtu ni, on this Saturday, I have a session, Zoom session with the workshop, qualitative basic workshop. But however, this is on Malay. The medium of the medium of workshop in Malay. So for those who are interested, you can read it, the detail here in my Padlet, right? So 9th of May. Okay, shall we continue for the next discussion? We talk about the chapter 2. Are you ready?
Yes, but I have one question, please. Sorry for
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. My question is, sir, talking about limitation, scope and limitation.
Okay.
And I want to know what is difference between limitation and delimitation.
Okay, this is a good question. As I mentioned to you before this, some of the scholars, they use delimitation. Delimitation is a similar things with the scope of study. All right, delimitation is a scope of study. Some of the scholars use scope, some of scholars use delimitation, but it's the same. All right.
Okay.
All right. Is it clear?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so now I want to share about the second part. How to make it dia hilang dia punya tu.
Assalamualaikum, doktor.
Okay. Ya, Waalaikumsalam.
Saya nak tanya, kualitatif memang tak ada research objektif ke?
Dia research objektif ni, ayat yang tepat untuk kualitatif dia panggil purpose of study. As I mentioned to you. Sebab tu kita pakai purpose statement. Purpose statement ni sebenarnya adalah objektif. Kalau objektif, dia sesuai guna untuk kuanti sebab dia ada general objektif dengan specific objektif sebab we are going to test that. However, in qualitative research, we are not going to test the hypothesis, but we are developing the hypothesis. So the argument here, you can read from Bloomberg and Vogue 2016, they discuss about the purpose rather than objective.
Okay.
You can read Merriam too. Merriam-Tisdale 2016 also discuss about this. This more used on the purpose statement.
Purpose statement, okay, right. Got it. Thank you, Doctor.
Purpose is objective. All right. Because you are not going to test that, right?
Right.
Okay, so now we go and move to the chapter 2. Can you see my slide here?
Can you see that? Nampak, Doktor? Nampak?
Hello, everyone?
Yeah,
Can, Doctor.
Yeah.
Okay,
possible.
In chapter 2, you can start with the introduction. So how long the introduction? Maybe 1 pages, only half an pages, you can start. So in the introduction part, you highlight down what is the past research related with your study, meaning that turnover intention. So what is the concept of the turnover intention? What's the general overview based on your reading on turnover intention, based on your research, right? So this component, you can write down in the introduction. It seems like a preamble subtopic. How long the preamble subtopic? Maybe 1 pages or maybe half an pages. So please consider all these things. You can write down this in your writing. You can use this slide. This is point that you can highlight it in the introduction. Okay? And then after introduction, you start to discuss about the theory. Let's say, for example, I've mentioned to you in the problem statement, you want to study about C. However, when you study about C, you find theory A, you find theory B, for example. You highlight the G's in the problem statement. However, the detail of theory A, the detail of theory B, you highlight in chapter 2. So meaning that theory A would be the main subtopic for chapter 2, and the theory B will be your main subtopic for chapter 2. You can see that this is a structure. All right. So how about model? So model, it seems like a framework can elaborating the theory. So theory is the main one. Theory is explaining the phenomenon. However, the model is a framework for you to elaborate further on the theory. I give you an example. You want to study about how do you learn from the colleagues in the work field, in the workplace. Okay, you learn from the colleague. For example, you as a medical doctor, at the same time, you learn from the another senior medical officer. So how do you elaborate the process of learning? So this part, you can use model communities of practice because you are talking about you are learn from the department members or from the colleagues. However, the model communities of practice by Leif Ewinger is originates from the theory of the social learning theory by Bandura. So meaning that the theory is a ultimate one. Under the theory is a model. So if you feel that your study, you need the model, you can park the model under that theory. All right. Let's say, for example, model 1 is under theory 1. So you can put model 1 under theory 1. It can be. All right. Or maybe you just simply say you discuss about theory itself. No, you don't have the model. Then you highlight the theory. All right. If you have the model, you have another subtopic under the theory. You come up with the model. Is it clear? If your research need 2 theories, then you have 2 main subtopic, for example. So it based on your research. Some of your qualitative research is just rely on the one theory. It can be because we don't have IV, we don't have DV. You want to study about something like really inductive. All right. So it can be one theory. Some of the research, I found the research that they just rely on the one theory, and then they come up with the elaboration and discussion from the findings. All right. At the end of chapter 2, you come up with the theoretical framework. All right. At the end of chapter 2, you come up with the theoretical framework. Why theoretical framework? Because the theoretical framework is underlying the structure, the scaffolding, or the frame of your study. It seems like the body of literature. You have the theory A, you have the theory B. How do you interpret A and B to discuss C? So then you can discuss in theoretical framework. All right. So one way to identify and establish the theoretical framework of the qualitative is to review the relevant literature. So meaning that you have done your review the relevant literature in your writing in chapter 2. So now, how do you present again? How do you relate this? All right. So why theoretical framework? So theoretical framework is more suitable for qualitative research at the end of chapter 2 rather than conceptual framework. Because conceptual framework, basically you can have the conceptual framework at the end of the chapter 4 after you have the data, because you can come out the conceptual framework based on your findings. It would be simply slightly different with the quantitative research. In the quantitative research, you need your conceptual framework. Without conceptual framework, you may not done your research because you need to know what is your IV, DV, and your intervening variable. But in qualitative research, we are not going to test the hypothesis. You will develop the hypothesis. So it's a very good thing that for you to have the conceptual framework at the end of chapter 4. So what makes at the beginning, you need to have theoretical framework. Because if you refer to Merriam and Tisdale, I forget the book, I forget the page, but you can read Merriam and Tisdale 2016. In the page 86, you discuss about why theoretical framework is more suitable compared to the conceptual framework. Because in theoretical framework, they have a thoughts, they have ideas, they have the framework to talk about your study. All right. So you can have the theoretical framework at the end of chapter 2. And then second one, if you are doing qualitative research, you have the conceptual framework at the beginning, you may restrict it with that. So remember, in qualitative research, it's not like you are having that kind of the, perimeters or the barriers. You are going to probe it. You are going to understand the phenomenon rather than you are restricted with the certain framework. In quantitative research, yes, you restricted with a certain part because you need to know, and then you need work accordingly to the range. You have the variable. However, in qualitative research, it's more like exploration. So please, this is a more clear explanation. Then you need to know how theoretical framework works for the qualitative research. All right. So at the end of that, you come out with a summary. So the end of chapter 2. How long you write down the chapter 2, it depends on you. All right, sometimes maybe 20 pages, maybe 30 pages, it's up to you based on your discussion. Any question for chapter 2?
Doctor, I have a question.
Okay.
My name's Ainul.
Oh, Ainul, Madam Ainul, you ITM.
Yes.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah. How are you, doctor?
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, the question is, in your slide, if there's theory 1, theory 2, theory 3, we need to put together all the literature discussing theory 1, like that, and
Yeah.
theory 2.
Exactly. So meaning that, let's say for example, you have theory 1. Under theory 1, you need to identify actually what is a theory 1. You refer to the main scholar to talk about theory 1. You explain blah 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 about theory 1. And then you can support after that your writing, you can refer to the past research related with theory 1. All right? The other research but the research is related to the theory 1. All right? After you have past research, then you have the current research. So what's the current research? The current research is less than 5 years of study, but they study, they use and discuss that theory. So you can put together under this subtopic. Is it clear?
Yes. Thank you very much, doctor.
All right. So if you're okay with chapter 2, so now we discuss the chapter 3. Okay, basically.
I have a question.
Okay.
Doctor, my name is
Yes, please.
I want to ask you about in PhD, can we use only one theory in research? One theory in
Yeah,
theoretical framework?
I'm not clear with the question. Can you speak louder? I'm sorry.
Sorry, can we use only one theory to support our research?
Yeah, in qualitative it may be possible. Maybe
Okay,
maybe your purpose of study looking on this part, then you just rely on that theory. No problem. You can explore it.
Okay, then why are some research put the theoretical framework in chapter 1 instead of chapter 2?
All right. I think you know the reason why we put at the end of chapter 2, because you have already discussed it. Okay, in literature review. All right. You have discussed everything. Then how do you synthesize the information from the reading, from the discussion in literature review? Then you come out theoretical framework. How you will start with theoretical framework at the beginning without discussing about the chapter 2 first? All right. So you need to have the argument. Then you know why do we relate this.
Okay.
All right. Okay. All right. Is it okay? We move to the third chapter.
Doctor, sorry.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Okay.
You
What's
did
your name?
mention about. My name is Hayati.
From?
UPM.
Okay.
Okay. You did mention about synthesizing the literature, right? Not
Yeah.
not reporting the literature.
Oh, this
So
is chapter 1, right? It's a chapter 1.
yeah, in chapter 1 and also chapter 2, right? We're supposed to synthesizing the literature, right? So what do you mean by synthesizing the literature, doctor?
It's a good question. Basically, you are not reporting that. For example, you get data from statistic or from the figure from the national policy, for example. Majority of students, it seems like they copy paste. You know, they explain about 80% of this and then 65% media, blah, 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 blah. No need to do that. You straightforward. Meaning that according to the theory, according to the statistic, that most of the youngsters, they are spending the time more on the internet. That's it. Rather than you explain the figure, so on and so forth, you start to differentiate with others. But in writing, in academic writing, it's more straightforward. You synthesize the information that you have. This showing your ability as a researcher. Okay?
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Welcome. And then we go to the third chapter. All right, so what is the third chapter actually? So the third chapter is talk about methodology, meaning that the whole process of your research. So basically, in chapter 3, okay, I explain the gist first. What is supposed to be in chapter 3? Majority of students, their misunderstanding about methodological part. It seems like, hello? All right, thank you so much. All right, okay. Okay, this is a commercial break. Okay, so basically in methodological part, it's more like you need to explain the process. Majority of the student, this seems like they're integrating the literature review from the methodological perspective. They combine Creswell, Merriam, Stick, Mostaker, for example, put in the one discussion and leave it. Actually, this will not happen like that. The chapter 3 is supposed to be explained. You need to explain the process. If you do like that, you put all the Merriam, Creswell, Sadana, for example, put in one sentence or in one discussion, it seems like I'm buying a new qualitative books. So I'm, as a reader, as an examiner, they want to see what actually you have did it. What is the process you have done it. So in chapter 3, you're supposed to be explain whatever you do. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's say, for example, data collection. So how do you conduct data collection? You explain the process, based on your whatever you're doing. And then you support with the literature review from qualitative perspective. To support that, meaning that you are doing in the right way, as per suggested by methodology. That's on how you write down chapter 3. It's not like, it seems like I buy a new qualitative book, right? But majority, when I read the chapter 3, it seems like I buy a new qualitative book. So please avoid it, okay? So in chapter 3, basically, you start with introduction, maybe a very light introduction, maybe half pages. And then you start to discuss why you choose qualitative research, all right? Why you choose qualitative research, based on your research, not to put from the other scholars say about qualitative research. You need to discuss based on your research, then supported with the scholarly saying about qualitative research, all right? And then the second one, what's the approach you use? Maybe you use qualitative case study, ethnography, phenomenology, so on and so forth. You define it here. So in qualitative research, basically they have 5 approaches, which is a case study, phenomenology, ethnography, grounded theory, and last but not least is a narrative study. All right. So if you choose, let's say for example, a case study, you need to define why you choose case study here. First, you define why you choose qualitative, and then the second one you choose you need to define why you choose that approach. All right. And then after that, we'll move for the next subtopic. You discuss about the method you use in collecting your data. So basically, in qualitative, we have 4 types of data collection. First is an interview, observation, document analysis, and last but not least is a audio-visual material. All right. So it depends on you. If you use in-depth interview, you need to report the in-depth interview. If you use document analysis, you need to report the document analysis. But if you don't have the observation, so no need to report it. So I just write down the guideline for you to discuss in this slide. All right. It's not necessary you use to all, but if you use all, then you need to report it. Okay. And then after that, after you discuss the type of data collection you go, and then you start to discuss about what is your process prior to data collection before entering the field. So you can discuss about how do you get the consent from the informants. You start to discuss about the criteria of informant. You discuss about the purposive sampling that you do. All right. So remember, purposive sampling, the good purposive sampling would be good if you have the good informant criteria. If you don't have the informant criteria, you may find difficulties to find the purposive sampling. All right. And then maybe you can decide to describe the sampling itself. How do you get data? Is it purposive sampling? Of course, purposive sampling is a main thing in qualitative research, but under the purposive sampling, they have the different types in terms of getting the data from purposeful sampling. So purposeful sampling, it seems like persampalan bertujuan dalam bahasa Melayu. For Johorian said that it's a purposive sampling. So meaning that you get the best informant, you get the best person to give the best data. So meaning that purposely you choose that informant. So you need to have that. And then you need to explain how do you sample it, then how do you reach the saturation point. You need to explain further on this part. All right. And then after you done the first part, you discuss about the prior activities, prior preparation before you go to the field. So now you need to explain what actually happened during the field. So meaning that during your proposal stage, you can explain your planning. All right. You can explain your planning. So you can imagine when you go to the field, this process is supposed to be fit. All right. However, after you go back from your field, meaning that after you done your data collection, after you done everything, you can go back to chapter 3, you can improve this chapter 3 again, based on your experience, based on the process that have you done. Maybe you are planning for the in-depth interview, for example. However, when you go to the field, the in-depth interview will be more difficult compared to FGD. Then you start to go for FGD. Then later on, in the proposal stage, you can plan for the in-depth interview. But after you go back from the field, you can still can get in-depth interview, but they find difficulties, maybe 1 or 2 informant, but the rest you get from the FGD. Before this, during the proposal stage, you never mention the FGD. But after they're done your data collection, you can write back to your chapter 3, you can improve your chapter 3 and edit the FGD discussion in your chapter 3. All right, is it clear? Okay, so in the proposal stage, you just write down your planning. Okay, so here during the data collection, meaning that on the field, you can start to discuss about your pilot study. All right, what is a pilot study? What is your actual study? So basically, the pilot study is really advisable for the qualitative researcher because this is more on your preparation as a researcher. All right, you know about on how to probe, meaning that you are piloting the instrument. So in qualitative researcher is an instrument. All right, qualitative researcher is a primary instrument. So meaning that you are piloting the instrument, meaning that yourself is more on like your preparation. You can familiar with the flow of probing, and then at the same time you can still improve your interview protocol. If you choose for the semi-structured interview protocol, you can still improve your probing question, for example. All right, and then you can discuss about the probing technique you use. So how do you ensure the audit trail? So audit trail is talking about the evidence you use. You need to explain the process. All right. And then what is the ethics? Ethics meaning that before you go for the data collection, you need to identify what actually the ethics happen, the ethical issues that you need to consider. All right. And then after you done data collection, now you move for the next phase, which is the data analysis and interpretation. How do you manage your data? Let's say, for example, you use NVivo, all right? You use NVivo. Inshallah, we will have another session for NVivo session. Maybe I already invited for the conduct the NVivo session. If you were interested, you can join that, all right? So let's say, for example, you use the NVivo as a data management software. It's not data analysis software because the analysis is based on you as a researcher. NVivo, Atrasti, so on and so forth is just a tools, all right, to help you to manage the data. All right, so you need to explain how do you do that, or if you're doing manually, it can be, you need to explain that. And then what is the transcription process have done, how do you transcribe, you need to explain it. Okay, how do you analyze the interview, and how do you develop the teams? You start from the code, category, and teams. So how do you develop the teams? Because the teams itself is answering your research question. All right, so teams itself is answering and addressing your research question. So how do you develop the process? Because in qualitative research, you start from the bottom until the top, all right? From the bottom to the top. And then after you done your discussion on data analysis, then you start to discuss about the validity and reliability in qualitative research. So validity and reliability is a terminology by quantitative. In qualitative research, it's called trustworthiness. Okay, trustworthiness. So here you can explain the audit trail, you can explain the member check, maybe you can use the peer examination, maybe you can have the external reviewer, which is a peer debriefing. All right, you can have research diary, and then you can have a triangulation. So triangulation, they have 4 types in triangulation in qualitative research, which is triangulation data, observation, method, and theory. All right, you explain here in validation, and last but not least, you explain how do you avoid bias. For example, you have 30 years experience as a teacher. By right, your PhD research is looking on the teaching and learning process in the classroom at the school. So how do you bracketing yourself? How do you avoid bias? All right, so you can need to explain here. All right, how do you avoid bias? Basically, you can avoid the bias if you can choose for the validation process, which is you go for the member checks. All right, you check the codes that have been developed with the informant. You can appoint peer review, meaning that your supervisory committee, or for those who have done your PhD, you can have the group members, team members to cross-check your findings to ensure that you are not biased. Or maybe you can appoint some external reviewer, which is maybe your peer debriefing, all right? The external expert to see whether the data or maybe the codes that you have developed is really false to the informant's perspective. It's not your perspective. Remember, in qualitative research, you want to open the emic, not ethic. Emic is a informant's perspective. Ethic is your perspective. All right. We don't want ethic. We want emic. All right. So that's all about the sharing. If any question about how do we develop and how do we write the meaning that the qualitative research proposal? Have any question?
Doctor, just to check with you about the qualitative paradigm. I'm referring to ontological dengan epistemological. Macam mana
Okay.
tu?
Okay, you can explain it at the beginning of your discussion. Meaning that at the beginning of chapter 3, you can start with the epistemology, ontology, and methodology part. You can start with that at the beginning of the chapter 3. So, epistemologically, why you choose this research, all right? Ontologically, why do you want to conduct the research? And then, of course, you start to discuss about the methodological perspective, which is chapter 3. You can start discussing at the beginning of the part.
Good afternoon, doctor.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yeah, I am Dr. Inusa from UTM.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you?
My question is fine. My question is this: when they said we have to give expected findings,
okay,
mostly quantitative research.
Okay.
I don't know whether that is applicable in qualitative.
Okay.
If so, then where do we position it?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay, basically, in a qualitative research, it's more on the exploration. You may not predict your findings, but your finding would be something that may be emergent. All right, so emergent data is happen and commonly happen in qualitative research. Sometimes, from the literature review, you know that, okay, maybe this is a possible angle that you want to probe. Maybe this is something that possible things that maybe you can explain and you can go further. However, when you go to the field, when you meet your informant, when you do observation, or maybe you get data from the document analysis, maybe you find something different, or maybe you can get more, or maybe you have another explanation from that. So this is a fantastic about qualitative research. You can explain more further rather than you just restricted with the the angle of the literature review. Compared to the quantitative research, you need to rely on it because you want to ensure whether they accept hypothesis or reject hypothesis. But in qualitative research, you need to explain. Maybe you get the new things. This is called the serendipity data, meaning that there's something new. Some of the books, they explain it as an incidental findings. You can explain it further.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, welcome. Any question? Before we, I think this is 12:28, all right?
Assalamualaikum, Doctor.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
I'm Nadia from UTM. I just want to ask, in qualitative research, do we need to develop a model if I were to choose case study as my approach?
All right, that's a good question. You can still develop the model based on your findings. Which the part is called conceptual framework based on your findings. You can make it at the end of chapter 4, meaning that after you've done your data collection, you've done your discussion, then you can come out your framework. So the framework will be considered as a model, meaning that to explain based on your findings to talk about that particular phenomenon.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. It's clear.
Welcome. All right.
Dr. Assalamualaikum. I have two
Waalaikumsalam.
questions. I'm from
Okay.
UPM.
Okay.
And I'd like to know that usually when we see that quali and quanti, that the quanti is always based on survey, but in the quali, can we just conduct one quali by survey? Is it possible?
Can you repeat the question? Not really to capture the information. Can you repeat again the question?
In maximum studies, in the
Okay.
quanti, we saw that it's based on survey mostly, right? The survey
Based on?
results, they report. But
Okay.
in quali, apart from the interview and observation, can survey also play a role for data, for informations?
Oh, meaning that talking about survey. In qualitative research, we don't use survey. But the base survey maybe you can do for the preliminary research or preliminary study. You want to understand the phenomenon. Maybe you can do a very light survey. But in qualitative research, you are not representing the survey result. You are representing the explanation of the phenomenon.
So that's based on interview, document analysis, and observations mostly, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and another question is this. You know that the main difference between, we know that quali and quanti is also the research questions, the variables. So
Okay.
here, actually, can you please explain more about the research questions of the qualitative research?
Okay, basically you derive the research question from the purpose of your study. All right. So how do you get the purpose of study? You derive from the problem statement. So meaning that you can see that pyramid, the blue pyramid I shared to you. From the problem statement, you have the purpose statement. From the purpose statement, you have the research question. So the research question, this is a main thing that you need to address. All right. Compared to the quantitative is different, because quantitative research, from the research question, they help you to develop the objective, right? So in qualitative research, from the purpose, you derive the research question. So from the research question, you need to address that. So from the every research question, let's say for example, you have main 4 research question. Every research question, you have the probing questions. You have the sets of questions under that particular research question. So that's probing question, you can put it in the interview protocol or interview guide, all right, for you to probe and try to elaborate it. At the end, the answers from the probing question will help you to address the main research question.
No, doctor. My question was, in fact, in the quanti, the research question so far I saw that it depends on the variables. So
Exactly.
for quali, it based on what?
It based on the discussion that you discussed in problem statement, from the research gap, from the practice gap, research gap, and theoretical gap that I mentioned to you.
Basically on the gaps, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Can those be also the variables?
No, you don't have the variable actually. You are not restricted with the variable. The variable based on the literature review is just give you the way, all right, on how to probe it. The later on you need to probe according to your research.
Okay, in that case, I'm sorry to interrupt again. That if it is a mixed method, only then we can have all these things together, right?
Yeah, in a mixed method, in different case, sir. So the mixed method, you need to have the quantitative part, and then you need to have the qualitative part. And of course, you will be more do extra work, right? Because in the methodological part, you still need to report both. And of course, in the findings also, you need to report both. So it's a different case, sir. Because this is part more on the qualitative study. So of course, when you have the mixed method, you need to follow the quantitative discipline, you need to follow the qualitative discipline.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Okay. So, all right, I think so now it's a 12:33, maybe it's the last question.
Doctor, actually we have a few questions at the chat box.
Okay.
Okay, the first one is, could you please recommend the good book or article for develop an interview protocol?
For the interview protocol, you can refer to Cresswell and Poe 2018. You can refer Merriam and Tisdale 2016. I think this is 2 books that you can refer it. Or maybe you can refer to Bloomberg and Vogue 2016. They also have the good things for you to develop the interview protocol.
Alright, okay. So the next question is from Lai UPM. Doctor, could you elaborate on qualitative research design, qualitative data collection, and qualitative data analysis? What are the difference between them?
Alright, in qualitative research, is different compared to quantitative research. In quantitative research, you need to separate the phase. In quanti, you have data collection and phase, and then data analysis phase, right? It's 2 different things. However, in qualitative research, data collection and data analysis will be at the same time. It's different. That's why, during your data collection, actually you start to analyze, right? You start to jot down the something like maybe from the verbal or maybe from non-verbal reaction, and then you start to probe, meaning that you start to do the data collection and data analysis at the one time. So maybe you may not delay that. After you go back from your interview, you need to transcribe, you need to do the first layer of the analysis. You develop the open coding, all right? Compared to the quantitative, you can hold, you can go get the data and then later on you can analyze it. But in quantitative research, you may not do like that. If you do like that, so maybe your data will be jumbled, and then maybe you may find difficulties to find actually how do you probe that, and then maybe you find difficulties to find the saturation.
Okay, alright. So at this stage, maybe a few questions. From the Anting Wang, Doctor, can you give us a specific example about the difference about issue and problem?
Alright, the issue you're highlighting actually, what actually the underlying that problem? Issues is underlying the problem. Because from the issue, they will create the problem. Right? So of course, you underlying the problem in the background of study, meaning that the issue itself. So after you have the issue, so that is a possible problem happen from the issue.
Okay, alright. Okay, next. What's the meaning of definition of term? Is it give the meaning of every single title?
It's not necessarily on a title, but the words or maybe the keyword that you always use in your research. It's not necessarily based on title itself, but it can be for the certain word that you use.
Okay, from the Izzah Mardia.
Okay.
Doctor, can we use only use one theory in theoretical framework? Can it contribute to the theoretical gap?
Yeah, you can elaborate what actually the gap inside of the theory. All right, so you can still elaborate that.
Okay, maybe the last question.
Okay.
From the Hua Peng, can you give us a specific example for the scope of study?
Okay, the scope of study is talk about what actually you want to go and how do you get the data, where do you get the data. So basically, you want to study about, for example, maybe your scope of study, you want to study about turnover intention in private institution. So what actually the criteria of private institution, you want to looking on the manufacturing side, for example. So you narrow down the scope. You are not simply said there is a from private, but the private from the manufacturing side. And then maybe the management side, you need to know, is it possible from the middle management, top management, or the subordinate? You need to precise it. So you elaborate in the scope of study. Maybe your research of study, scope of study is focusing more on the subordinate and the middle management. So how about the senior management? How about the top management level? Meaning that excluded in your research. It's not focusing on your research. You're just looking on the subordinate and the middle management itself. Based on how you define in the code, the scope.
Okay, the last one from the line UPM. Apart from the theoretical framework, do we also need to involve the conceptual framework in our thesis? What is the difference between them?
Okay, as I mentioned before, this theoretical framework is more on the, what is the idea, the thought itself, all right? How do you discuss it, the theory, and then how you discuss the model and you relate it. So this is a theoretical framework. The theoretical framework, it seems like a ruler, will help you to guide your research. You are not restricted with the theory, but that is a guidance for you. You can still probe, you can still get the new findings, all right? You meaning that you are not restricted with the theory. However, when you have the conceptual framework, basically, after you done your data collection, after you done your analysis, you can come out actually what is the conceptually framework that you can construct from the findings. So basically, the conceptual framework will be at the end of chapter 4.
Okay, so I think that's all the question for the participant. So now we are at 12:38.
All right.
Okay, so Alhamdulillah, we end our session today with the Dr. Mursyid. So thank you to all the participants and also the Dr. Mursyid to spend time with us for this workshop. Maybe we can arrange another workshop.
Sure, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Alright.
I apologize if I have something that maybe you're getting hurt. I'm so sorry to say that. All right. So my intention here is just to share the knowledge during Ramadan. May Allah SWT bless us, and then may Allah SWT help our study, inshallah. All right. Thank you so much, Josh. Okay, thank you so much, Josh, to give this platform. I hope for those who want to share it, okay, you can snap the picture and share in your Facebook, right? Maybe they benefit others to share about this information. So I hope to see you again, inshallah.
Okay, so Alhamdulillah. So maybe you can we will provide the link for evaluation for the participants through the group. We have a two group, which is the Telegram community for the postgraduate student, which is from the UPM and the other university, and also for the degree or bachelor student, we have a group and Yosh Academic Sharing. So both the group will help a student in finding the project and also for the research, inshallah. Okay, so we end our session today with maybe with several others. Okay, thank you everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. See you again.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. Stay safe.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.